It's a land of pride and passion, of toreadors and Catholic kings, of regal processions and flamenco dance. It's a landscape of heightened senses and a history that moves at a syncopated pace. It's a country that has coined the word alma, or soul, for its national identity. Spain is the second largest country in Europe after France. It covers an area only slightly larger than the state of California. Bordered by the Atlantic Ocean and Mediterranean Sea, Spain's southernmost tip is only 8 miles from Africa. It also includes the Canary and Balearic Islands. Spain shares the Iberian Peninsula with Portugal and is separated from France by the Pyrenees, whose average height is even greater than that of the Alps. Spain has attracted a steady procession of foreign occupants: trading Phoenicians, blue-eyed Celts from the north and Iberian tribesmen from the south, invading Romans, Visigoths, and Moors. It's also been the battleground for some of the bloodiest internal strife in history, from the Spanish Inquisition to the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. At its peak in the 1500s, the Spanish Empire circled the globe. Spain is an intricate overlay of cultures brought by traders and invaders, from journeys abroad and insurrections within. It's the confluence of industry and agriculture, where ancient tradition holds on tenaciously while the next century bangs at the door. Spain maintains 4 distinctive languages and 7 dialects, a diversity that keeps the country regionalized. Virtually all roads lead to Madrid, since it's at the center of Spain. There's a saying here that the height of human happiness is to go to the part of heaven that has a view of Madrid. Barajas, Madrid's international airport, services an extensive network of domestic flights. Madrid has been the capital of Spain since 1561. Prior to that time, it was nothing more than a fortress, a no-man's land that divided north from south. Today, Madrid is one of the most kinetic cities in Europe, while still paying homage to its past. There are monuments to Cibeles, the goddess of fertility, and Neptune, protector of the seas. The city's main arteries radiate from the Puerta del Sol, which is at the center of Madrid. All distances in Spain are measured from the plaza as a 0 point. Madrid has the country's largest bull ring, with a bullfight museum next door, and a modern soccer stadium where the famed home team Real Madrid plays. The royal palace, called the Palacio de Oriente, is so extravagant that Napoleon claimed his brother Joseph, then King of Spain, had better lodgings than Napoleon's own at Tuileries. Designed by Italian masters Sacchetti and Sabatini, the palace is decorated with art and artifacts by some of the most gifted talents in history: Goya, Bernini, Caravaggio, El Greco, Rubens, and Velázquez. The salons, libraries, music rooms, and reception halls are hung with some of the most valuable tapestries in the world, woven by Belgian masters from the days when Spain ruled the Low Countries. When Joseph Bonaparte initiated plans for the Prado, it marked the first attempt to make Spanish art accessible to the Spanish people. Today, the museum houses more than 6,000 paintings, including Goya's 2 celebrated Majas, one clothed, the other not. Rumor had it that the model was the Duchess of Alba, and as recently as 1945, the Alba family had the Duchess's body exhumed in order to compare her measurements with those of the real model. nothing conclusive was proven. One block from the Prado, Picasso's Guernica has been on display in the Casón del Buen Retiro since 1981. The Plaza Mayor is now a subdued version of its outspoken past. Its balconies could hold more than 50,000 spectators who came to see bullfights, coronations, parades, and canonizations. The last bullfight was held here in 1847. The last buses and trolleys to race through the plaza were banned in 1970. The plaza was built by Philip III in 1619. This equestrian statue of him dominates the center of the square. Besides festive events, the plaza was a forum for auto da fe, the burning of heretics, one of which was such a popular spectacle that enough nobles turned up to fill all 476 balconies. The Calle Cuchilleros, the Street of Knives, is just down the stairs at the end of the plaza. It is famous for Sobrano de Botines at number 17. Ernest Hemingway immortalized this address in his novel The Sun Also Rises. It has been a popular haunt ever since. With only 5 million residents, there's one bar for every 600 people in Madrid. On the Calle Cuchilleros, there's an abundance of little bars spilling music and the smell of red wine into the air. It's also the place to indulge in some tertulia, as Café Chat is known. The Spanish day begins with a late breakfast, usually coffee and rolls. Lunch is the big meal of the day. It's enjoyed sometime between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. Supper starts late in the evening. Restaurants are open from 8 p.m., but a Spaniard wouldn't think of sitting down to dine before 10:30. On the Calle Cuchilleros, number 1 is Las Cuevas de Luis Candelas, a restaurant built in a cave to commemorate Luis Candelas, a local outlaw who became a folkloric Robin Hood. It is said that Candelas lived in the caves below the Plaza Mayor. Waiters are dressed in period costume that in the old days included flintlock pistols in the belts. The Parque del Retiro is one of Spain's most popular parks, but it wasn't always that way. From the 17th century until 1868, the Retiro was a hunting ground for the aristocracy. Today it holds much tamer diversions. The Retiro is lined with fountains and statues and hosts everything from an annual dog show to art exhibitions. Madrid's Gran Via has become one of Europe's premier shopping strips, and nowhere is post-Franco prosperity more apparent. In just one decade, Spain catapulted from being an isolated, repressed culture to sporting some of the most current products of the day. On the Gran Via, there are also some of the most stunning price tags to match. Madrid is famous for its monumental statues. Among them is Philip IV. This equestrian statue was designed by Velázquez, cast in Florence, and supposedly mathematically computed by Galileo. In Madrid, the ultimate local specialty is cochinillo, suckling pig, 21 days old, no more than 9 pounds. It is basted with butter, onions, salt, lots of paprika, bay leaves, garlic, lemon, parsley, thyme, and white vinegar. Paella, considered the national dish, is a Valencian specialty. It must be cooked in open, shallow pans for best results. There's also gazpacho from Andalusia, the cold tomato and vegetable soup flavored with vinegar. Legend has it that gazpacho was a Roman military ration and that this was the vinegar the Roman soldier gave to Christ on the cross. Barcelona is famous for its large sausages and zarzuela, a hearty fish soup that's more like a stew. There are chicken, duck, partridge, and lamb dishes on most menus. But seafood is the mainstay of the Spanish diet. Whether inland or on the coast, the fresh catch of the day is raced to restaurants all over the country. Spaniards love their wine. It's often drunk with each meal of the day, yet it is rarely consumed to excess. Just 1 hour from Madrid, in the foothills of the Guadarrama Mountains, is the Escorial. It has been described as everything from the eighth wonder of the world to a monotonous symphony of stone. This palace monastery was commissioned by Philip II in 1563. Philip was an ailing, introverted king with an aggressive zeal for religion. He preferred to surround himself with monks instead of courtiers, so the Escorial contains 300 monks' cells. Add to that more than 2,000 windows, 1,200 doors, and 100 miles of passageways, and the Escorial is large enough to be classified as a city. Almost all Spanish kings since Charles V are buried here, as are all queens who gave birth to sons. Another side trip from Madrid combines two destinations, Avila and Segovia. The perfectly restored walled city of Avila is only 69 miles away. On the way to Avila, there are Roman roads high in the Gredos Mountains, just as they were when the legions marched across Spain. At 3,700 feet, Avila is the highest provincial capital in Spain. It was made famous by Saint Teresa, who took a vow of austerity and devoted her life to reforming the Carmelite order. She was the daughter of nobles of Jewish ancestry who sent their daughter to a Carmelite convent to protect her from the Inquisition. When Teresa claimed to be having conversations with Christ and insisted that the Carmelites relinquish their servants and their silver, she became very unpopular. Today, monuments to Teresa abound. 1 hour's drive from Avila is Segovia, perhaps Spain's most poetic city. This intricately planned city is framed between the muscular form of a Roman aqueduct and the graceful pinnacles of the Alcazar. Remnants of the Roman occupation are still in evidence today. The aqueduct measures 2,400 feet long, 102 feet high. Its enormous arches are wide enough to accommodate 4 lanes of traffic. The aqueduct was built without any mortar, and in medieval times it was believed that the devil erected the stones in one night. The aqueduct still brings water from nearby mountain springs to the city. Nearby stands the 12th century Alcazar, where Isabella was crowned Queen of Castile. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon united Catholic Spain against the Moorish invaders. The Alcazar is also where King Alfonso the Wise dared speculate that the earth moved around the sun. At that moment, a bolt of lightning is said to have slashed across the sky, and Alfonso swore to repent for his sin by wearing a penitential cord for the rest of his life. All Spanish cities are graced by narrow, winding streets. Pedestrians may have to step into a doorway to allow traffic to pass. Spain hosts a network of hotels called paradors. These government-owned inns, 86 in all, occupy restored castles, convents, palaces, and mansions. Spaniards have converted relaxation into an art form. American author Washington Irving wrote that here there are two classes of people to whom life seems one long holiday, the very rich and the very poor. One, because they need do nothing, and the other, because they have nothing to do. 43 miles south of Madrid is Toledo. Built into the slope of a gorge, Toledo is bordered on three sides by the Tajo River. The capital of Visigoth Spain for nearly 150 years, Toledo was then occupied by Moors for 400 years and became the capital of Catholic Spain for nearly 500 years. The city is a veritable cascade of tan buildings, terracotta roofs, and tortuous cobblestone streets. It is the living vision that El Greco immortalized in his canvases. Since it's officially a national treasure, even new buildings must conform to the styles of the 12th to 15th centuries. Toledo was the capital of Spain's Jewish community, with some 12,000 Jews residing in the city during the 12th century. Unlike most of Spain, Toledo had a relatively peaceful history, with Christians, Moors, and Jews living side by side.
Cathedrals are to Spain what skyscrapers are to New York,
said travel writer Jan Morris, and the Toledo Cathedral is one of Spain's finest examples. There are 22 chapels, there are 750 stained glass windows, and the bell in the slender tower weighs more than 17 tons. Once the site of a Visigothic church and then a mosque, the cathedral took more than 260 years to complete. It stands as a classic example of Spanish Gothic architecture, with all the vastness and heaviness of the Spanish temperament and Moorish flair thrown in for spice. Nowhere is the Mudéjar overlap of Spanish and Moorish tastes more apparent. Inside are works by El Greco, Bellini, Goya, and Van Dyck. Born Domenikos Theotokopoulos in Greece, El Greco arrived in Toledo more than 400 years ago. The El Greco House and Museum is in an old Jewish quarter. He never actually lived at that address. His home was close by, but the structure is no longer standing. Today, his painting View of Toledo is the model by which all visitors compare the city. Little has changed since. Toledo is famous for inlaid Damascene work, introduced by Moors from Damascus. Patterns are cut into copper and filled by hammering in gold and silver wire. It's now called Toledo work. Of all its craftswork, Toledo is most proud of its swords. Toledanos have been making swords since the Phoenicians first arrived. The swords must be made of the durable Toledo steel, heated until it is red hot, beaten by a master craftsman to the proper temper and sharpness, straightened again and again, then plunged into water from the River Tajo, which is said to have special qualities for tempering steel. Toledo craftsmen helped arm the Roman legions. They also devised the deadly scimitar for Moorish cavalrymen. To own a Toledo blade was a sign of prestige for Renaissance duelists. Cortés and his conquistadores bore down on Aztec Mexico with Toledo swords in hand. Boarding parties in the Caribbean carried Toledo cutlasses. Handle grips are still crafted by hand. In finished form, the Toledo blade emerges like silver. For many people, Andalusia is Spain. It's the place where the Moors left their greatest mark. Andalusia is the land of dancing gypsies and clacking castanets, of sandy beaches and olive groves. It's the land of sol y sombra, of sun and shadow, where you can still see donkeys and pack mules padding along, dazzling white houses, live men on horseback, and bullfights. Cordoba was the capital of Moorish Spain. In the 10th century, it was the wealthiest, largest, and most civilized city in all of Europe. Cordoba's only peer was Baghdad, and it was second in size only to Constantinople. The Cordoba Mosque, called the Mezquita, contains a forest of 850 pillars. Marble, onyx, granite, and jasper reflect a spectrum of colors, and the exquisite mosaics of the mihrab, or prayer niche, are testament to the glory of Moorish Spain. After the Catholic king's retaking of Spain, the mosque became the Church of the Virgin of the Assumption. Chapels were built against the interior walls, and the north facade was closed off. In 1526, Charles V sanctioned a church to be built in the center of the mosque, after which he remarked regretfully that the builders of the cathedral had destroyed something unique in order to construct something common. The Moors built a renowned university that fostered the study of philosophy, science, and agriculture. They introduced Europe to sugar, eggplant, oranges, and watermelon. They brought the oval guitar and kettle drums, Arabic numerals, algebra, and, of course, paper. Today, Cordoba is renowned for its silversmiths and leather craftsmen. Since the 1950s, it has undergone a modern-day renaissance, and Cordoba's population has doubled to 300,000. The Bullfighting Museum contains memorabilia of the greatest matadors of all time, El Cordobés, Lagartijo, and Manolete, who was killed in the ring in 1947. The old Jewish quarter is a small reminder of a large part of Spain's past. The Jews, who had been savagely persecuted by the Visigoths, helped the Moors conquer Spain. They were allowed to flourish under the Caliphate and produced outstanding leaders, such as Maimonides, physician, philosopher, and codifier of the Talmud. The most festive and flirtatious city in Andalusia is indisputably Seville. It's no wonder it was chosen to host the world's biggest party, the 1992 World's Fair, called the Age of Discovery. Even Saint Teresa admitted that anyone who could escape Seville without sinning was ahead of the game. Of the people in Seville, it is said they have three occupations: to dance, to fight bulls, and to go to church. Cervantes is believed to have conceived Don Quixote while he was a guest at the Seville prison. Don Juan pursued his amorous interludes in the mansions of Seville. Seville has inspired four great operas: Don Giovanni, The Marriage of Figaro, Carmen, and The Barber of Seville. Don Jose met his Carmen by the old tobacco factory. He was lured by her siren's charms, only to be destroyed by passion. Then there was the cunning Barber of Seville, who snipped his way into other people's business, although It is possible to just get a haircut in Seville. The city pulses with the stamp of flamenco heels and the wailing cries of the cante hondo, the deep song. Pain and suffering are the soul of the cante hondo.
Si mi corazón tuviera vidrieras de cristal, te asomarías y lo verías llorar gotas de sangre.
If my heart had window panes of glass, you would look in and see it cry drops of blood. Seville was the most coveted victory of the Reconquista. When Seville was back in Spanish hands, it was said that Christ triumphed over Mohammed. In honor of the occasion, the town planners decided, let us build a church that is so large that the world will think us mad. In fact, the Seville Cathedral surpassed in size only by St. Peter's in Rome and St. Paul's in London. One single aisle is as large as the entire nave and choir of Westminster Abbey. The tomb of Christopher Columbus is here, although some say he's buried in the Dominican Republic and others say his bones lie in Cuba. There are relics of the saints, Saint Sebastian, Saint Isidore, and Saint Ferdinand, the king who liberated Seville from the Moors, who is buried in the royal chapel. There are paintings by Murillo, Zurbarán, and Goya. A great cross of amethyst and gold that once belonged to a cardinal. Carved figures of cherubim dripping with 2,000 grapes, each one a pearl. In the royal chapel, the Virgin Mary's crown is changed every month. It is said that Ferdinand carried the same statue into battle with him. In another chapel is Murillo's Vision of San Antonio. The kneeling Saint Antonio was once cut out of the painting, but has been restored. They say the painting was once stolen and sold to a powerful New York banker and was later returned. Alongside the cathedral are the Archives of the Indies, a block-square Renaissance building designed by Juan de Herrera, creator of the Escorial. Inside are thousands of leather volumes cataloging accounts and conquests from the Age of Discovery. There are also maps, copies of letters from Columbus to his son, and a letter by Cervantes asking for a job. Seville straddles the banks of the Guadalquivir River, once a great waterway, although today there often isn't enough water to navigate. It was down the Guadalquivir that Columbus sailed his ships from Cadiz to Seville. Precious cargo of Peruvian silver was transported in the other direction. And for all navigators, by sea or by land, Seville's beacon is the Giralda Tower. One rewarding way to see Seville is by horse-drawn carriage, with a guide to point out places of interest. Many of the buildings around the Plaza de España are remnants of the Spanish-American Exposition of 1929. The small moat is a popular course for novice rowers, and ceramic crests of all the provinces of Spain line the walkways. In the middle of the Guadalquivir, a special site on the island of La Cartuja was chosen for the 1992 World's Fair. More than 350,000 trees and shrubs were transplanted to give shady relief during the scorching summer months of the fair, and several new bridges were built across the river to the fairgrounds. The expo is just one example of the new industry, commerce, and jobs coming to Andalusia. Traditionally the poorest area of Spain, Andalusia is now the fastest growing region in the country. Semana Santa, or Holy Week, reaches a feverish pitch throughout Spain. Each parish parades at least one float depicting scenes from the lives of Mary and Jesus. Satin, pearls, gold, nothing is too extravagant. The floats are followed by members of trade guilds wearing capuchones, the pointed hoods made infamous by the Spanish Inquisition. In Seville, every bell in town announces the Saturday night devotionals. The week after Semana Santa is the Feria de Abril, the spring fair, one of the most colorful pageants in the world. A paseo of traditional costumes parades through town. Food and wine flow in excess, and the gaiety continues well into the night. Companies and families rent tents along the boulevards so they don't have to go home for the full week of the fair. Every evening, a huge fireworks display kicks off the nocturnal revelry, which can continue well into the next day. The feria also marks the peak of the bullfighting season in Seville, with a corrida every day. The ritual of the corrida is innately Spanish, yet many visitors view the art form with apprehension. Contrary to popular belief, the bull doesn't respond to the redness of the matador's cape. Bulls are colorblind. The special orange sand of Seville is exported to bull rings worldwide. It is favored by matadors because it doesn't raise dust. The poet Francisco de Icaza wrote,
No hay en la vida nada como la pena de ser ciego en Granada.
There is no pain in life so cruel as to be blind in Granada. It's just 160 miles east of Seville. This is a distinctly Moorish town. Traces of Granada's Roman and Visigothic past have all but disappeared. While Columbus was venturing into the New World, Ferdinand and Isabella were fighting to expel the last North Africans and Jews from Spain. The last Moorish king was ousted from Granada in 1492. He reputedly sighed when he looked at the Alhambra Palace for the last time. His mother said,
Weep, my son, like a woman, for what you would not fight for like a man.
When Ferdinand and Isabella finally conquered Granada, the whole of Spain was in their hands. They chose to be buried where the Moors were finally defeated. Isabella's collection of religious paintings and Ferdinand's sword are on display in the Royal Chapel, as are the flags carried by Spanish troops when Granada surrendered. The Alhambra is actually a series of palaces. It's probably the most impressive result in the world of combining clay, wood, and tile. The Alcazaba is the oldest part. Originally it was a fortress whose bells warned of approaching danger and signaled times for irrigation. grounds of the Generalife have been called the Gardens of Seduction. The Alhambra once had 30 towers, some of them ornate palaces. Charles V, who had already allowed the alteration of the Cordoba Mosque, tore down a portion of the Alhambra to make room for his grand Renaissance palace. The Alhambra suffered further desecration during the Napoleonic invasions. Washington Irving was the U.S. ambassador to Spain in the 1820s, and his book, Tales of the Alhambra, inspired Queen Isabel II to begin restoration. The patios and towers are poetically named the Court of the Myrtles, the Court of Lions, the Hall of Ambassadors, the Hall of the Two Sisters, and the Room of Secrets, which might better be named the Room of No Secrets, since the acoustics make the slightest whisper audible. The snow-peaked Sierra Nevada are within 1 hour's drive of the city. Skiers visit the slopes from November to May at 8,000 feet, and at higher elevations they're skiing year-round. The Moors introduced agricultural products found previously only in the Orient, the Middle East, and North Africa. Today, Spain is self-sufficient in that holy trilogy of wheat, wine, and olives. But some 60% of Spain has never been cultivated, and geographers say that half the soil of Andalusia has blown into the sea. The sea attracts other things besides soil. The Costa del Sol is one of the biggest draws for visitors to Spain and covers more than 180 miles of Mediterranean coast. Malaga is the capital of the Costa del Sol. During the winter months, it has more sunny days than any other European city but one, and that's in southern Sicily. It also generates a lot of heat at night. Just as Spain favors late dining hours, entertainment begins late, with young people going to discotheques at midnight and living it up till dawn. The Costa del Sol is a popular stopover for sailors. The flags of many nations fly from luxury yachts and sailboats in harbors all along the coast. This country of 39 million people attracts over 50 million tourists each year. Many of them come for Spain's beaches. For many, the Costa del Sol has become overcrowded and overdeveloped. For others, it holds exactly what they're looking for, the excitement of a popular destination. 390 miles northeast of Madrid is Barcelona, Spain's front-runner in the post-Franco evolution. A cultural center for all of Europe, Barcelona is like a wise child with an independent, stubborn streak. Its residents speak Catalan, a language that has as much in common with Provençal French as it does with Spanish. This is the capital of Catalonia province, and it's been at odds with Castilian Spain for centuries. There are still separatists who would like to sever all ties with the rest of Spain. The Sardana, the signature dance of Catalonia, is a community event. The joined hands of the dancers symbolizes the struggle to keep the Catalan language and customs alive. Franco was so threatened by its message that he outlawed the Sardana in public squares. Today, it is performed in front of Barcelona's cathedral. Barcelona is known as Spain's most progressive and liberal city. It has given rise to such great innovators as Miró, Dali, Gaudí, and Pablo Casals. Barcelona is also an industrial workhorse and a haven for shoppers. The shady, tree-lined Ramblas forms a continuous promenade almost a mile long. Spaniards are an extremely social breed, and the general rule is that crowds are for joining, not avoiding. The Ramblas is a hive of activity, day and night. Along the Ramblas is the Gran Teatro del Liceo, Barcelona's opera house. At the end of the Ramblas are the docks. Barcelona has been a major shipping port for centuries, and when Columbus returned to this port from his landmark voyage, the Castilian Queen Isabel forbade Catalonian merchants from ever trading in the New World. Ironically, a statue of Columbus guards the harbor. High on the hill of Montjuïc is an amusement park, open green spaces, and a congregation of museums. There's an archaeology museum, a museum devoted to Catalan art and ceramics, and a museum devoted to famous native son Joan Miró. Miró's career spanned more than 70 years, and this collection traces his artistic development. The Montjuïc Stadium was built in 1929 for the World's Fair. There were high hopes that the stadium would be the site for the 1936 Olympics, but Berlin was the victor in that competition. After another unsuccessful bid in 1972, Barcelona was finally chosen to host the Olympics in 1992. Barcelona also celebrates the art of Pablo Picasso. The world's largest collection by one of the 20th century's greatest and most influential artists is on display in a 14th century palace. Picasso was admitted to the Barcelona School of Fine Art at age 14 and had his own studio by age 18. He is hailed as a master of the classic, neoclassic, Impressionistic, Cubist, and Surrealistic schools. Picasso worked 10 to 12 hours a day and was said to attack each blank canvas as a matador attacks a bull. Spanish architect Antonio Gaudí was one of the founding fathers of modernism and left the major body of his work in Barcelona. The dripping, biomorphic shapes of Gaudí's buildings are as avant-garde today as they were at the time their construction began. Gaudí had an almost maniacal avoidance of all flat surfaces, said one critic. It's apparent in the Casa Milà apartment house, the Parque Güell, and the Church of the Sacred Family. Begun in 1882, Gaudí expected La Sagrada Familia to take 200 years to complete. When he was struck by a cable car in 1926, his body was buried in the crypt of the unfinished cathedral. Construction continues to this day. A popular side trip from Barcelona is the mountain of Montserrat, inspiration for Wagner's opera Parsifal. Creased into the mountainside is a monastery where thousands of pilgrims come each year to venerate the image of the Black Virgin, protector of of the province. The monastery was founded in 880 and sacked by Napoleon in 1811. Today, some 300 Benedictine monks tend the shrine, work the ceramic and goldsmithing shops, and distill Aromas de Montserrat, an herbal liqueur sold in the snack bar. Northeast of Barcelona is the Costa Brava, a 130-mile strip of rocky beaches and fishing villages. Along the coast is Figueres, a charming little town with a most unpredictable attraction, the Salvador Dali Museum. This surrealist savant was born in Figueres and lived here during the last years of his life. Housed in an old theater adorned by behemoth eggs, the museum covers the whole range of the artist's sublime absurdity. Spain is a country of contrasts. It has evolved from the crossing of cultures and from the diversity of its landscapes. It's a country steeped in pageantry, culture, and history, and governed by an uncompromising zest for life. Of the people of Spain, it is said that the Catalan saves, the Andalusian sings, the Basque acts, the Castilian dreams, the Extremaduran fights, and the Galician yearns for what is not to be. But they all have one thing in common: their overwhelming sense of pride and their gratitude for everything under the sun.
Discover a beautiful land of enchanting castles, ancient cities, and long sandy beaches. Discover a dramatic history of visionary kings, brave explorers, and passionate leaders. Discover a people of proud traditions, strong faith, and genuine warmth. Discover an unforgettable country. International Video Network welcomes you on this video visits tour of Portugal, land of discoveries. Mainland Portugal lies at the far southwest corner of Europe on the western strip of the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal is bordered on the north and east by Spain. To the south and west is the Atlantic Ocean. Its borders were established in 1297, making it one of the oldest countries in Europe. Mainland Portugal is divided into 7 regions, each with its own individual landscapes, traditions, and charms. There are about 10 million people in Portugal. The vast majority are Roman Catholic. The capital and largest city of Portugal is Lisbon. Lisbon is located on the western coast of Portugal, where the Tagus River flows into the Atlantic. The history of Lisbon is engraved in the stones of its castles and its churches, its old houses and courtyards, its museums and innovative architecture. St. George's Castle sits upon one of Lisbon's legendary 7 hills. It is a symbolic link to the city's past. It was first used as a fortress during the Roman occupation in 200 BC and later as a Moorish citadel. Of all Lisbon's early inhabitants, the Moors had the most enduring impact. Their presence is still felt in the nearby Alfama, with its narrow winding streets, cobblestone squares, and iron balconies. The influence of the Moors is also evident in the azulejos, or decorated tiles that grace a large number of walls. They depict religious, mythological, or historical scenes. The National Azulejo Museum is located in the old monastery of Madre de Deus. Azulejo art continues to evolve and remains embedded in Portugal's culture. Modern artists have adapted a more contemporary style. Azulejos are produced and sold in many tile factories located throughout Portugal. At the Santana Tile Factory in Lisbon, traditional methods are used and each tile is still painted entirely by hand. Santana also produces other beautiful clay items. In 1147, Portugal's first king, Dom Afonso Henriques, conquered the Moors and brought Lisbon into the newly formed Portuguese nation. King Henriques had the Saint, or cathedral, built on the ruins of the Arab mosque in celebration of his victory. Its eclectic interior houses a Romanesque nave, Gothic chapels, and a Baroque choir. The city's greatest glory came in the 15th and 16th century, a period known as the Age of Discoveries. This age was ushered in by the 3rd son of King João I, Prince Henry the Navigator. A modern tribute to Prince Henry rises dramatically above the river in the Lisbon suburb of Belém, the monument to the discoverers. "35 years after Prince Henry's death, Manuel I ascended to the Portuguese throne. His reign from 1495 to 1521 proved to be one of the most glorious in Portuguese history. Vasco da Gama reached India. Pedro Alvarez Cabral discovered Brazil. Magellan began his journey around the world, and many other explorers spread Portuguese culture to the far reaches of the globe. Under Manuel I, Portugal developed its national style of architecture called Manuelino. It is a blending of earlier Gothic and Romanesque influences, resulting in a style unique to Portugal. A prime example of Manuelino style is the Jerónimos Monastery in Lisbon. The monastery was conceived and planned by King Manuel I to honor the voyages of discovery. The south door of the monastery, richly decorated with religious sculptures, is widely acknowledged as the finest masterpiece of the Manuelino style. The monastery was named after the king's patron saint, Saint Jerónimo, whose symbol, the lion, appears throughout. Inside the church, the tombs of Vasco da Gama and the great national poet Camões lie here. Camões, who lived during the 16th century, wrote the epic poem Lusíada, which glorifies the discoveries. The Tower of Belém stands majestically along the banks of the river Tagus, across from the monastery. This fortress was built in 1515 to protect the seaward entrance of the Portuguese capital. King João V dominated the first half of the 18th century. During this period, Portugal prospered from the profits of the gold and diamond mines in Brazil. João V used this wealth to build the great Águas Livres aqueduct. Altogether, the aqueduct is over 40 miles long. It still brings drinking water to Lisbon today. In 1755, Lisbon was hit with a massive earthquake. The earthquake destroyed over 2/3 of the city. In the northern section of town, a rotunda bears the name of the man who led the city's reconstruction, Sebastião José de Carvalho, the Marquis of Pombal. He quickly and efficiently rebuilt modern-day Lisbon's downtown. This section of Lisbon runs from the square of Dom Pedro IV, or Rocio, south to the waterfront. People of all ages congregate here. On the north side of the square stands the stately National Theatre, de Dona Maria II, crowned with the statue of Gil Vicente, Portugal's first dramatist. In front of the theater is one of two lovely fountains which also grace this square. Lisbon's main shopping and commercial district, the Baixa, is a grid of streets south of the Rocio. Many streets are closed to traffic, which allows performers to entertain the crowds. The Baixa's Rua Augusta leads to a 19th century triumphal arch, the entrance to the stately waterfront commercial square. It is known as Black Horse Square, after the statue of José I, which the Marquis of Pombal erected to honor his patron. The square is surrounded by 18th century government buildings, which include Lisbon's stock exchange. This site is where King Dom Carlos and his eldest son were assassinated in 1908. Their deaths led to the end of monarchy in Portugal. In 1910, Lisbon became the capital of a new republic. Fraught with political instability, it fell in a military coup in 1926. Antonio Salazar led the country for the next 40 years. His authoritarian rule kept Portugal isolated and prevented modernization. On April 25, 1974, a bloodless revolution occurred, paving the way for a new Portugal. This bridge on the Tagus was renamed the 25th of April Bridge in honor of this historic date. Modeled after the Golden Gate in San Francisco, it is the third largest suspension bridge in the world. It took 10 years before a stable government emerged after the revolution. Progress toward modernization began. In 1986, Portugal joined the European Economic Community. Peter Wise, a business journalist, describes the second phase of economic development.
Things began to change again in 1987 when, for the first time since the revolution, a government with a majority in parliament was elected. The majority gave the government the ability to implement some very broad reforms to change the way society had been run since the revolution. One of the major reforms that they've brought about is privatizing the companies that were nationalized under communist pressure in the wake of the revolution.
Privatization has made Portugal's industries more competitive and, coupled with increased foreign investment, has resulted in substantial economic growth. New buildings have sprung up everywhere, evidence of Portugal's economic progress. Innovative structures such as the Amoreiras, one of Europe's largest shopping and office complexes, and the BNU building have changed the face of Lisbon. The Bairro Alto section of the city is the center of Lisbon nightlife. From its narrow streets, the melancholic strains of Portugal's traditional music, called fado, can be heard.
Não há nada mais bonito. Não há nada mais bonito.
Lisbon's fado is sentimental and nostalgic. Their haunting lyrics and lamenting melodies are the true folk songs of the people.
Ai, o fado é sempre bem dito, mesmo cantado a chorar.
The singer is accompanied by a viola, a guitar, and the Portuguese guitarra, a 12-string descendant of the lute. Long inhibited by the government, the newfound freedom has caused a renaissance in the art world. Adorning a city square is one example of modern Portuguese art. It is called o Cautuleiro, or lottery man. The artist, Fernanda Assis, was inspired by the colorful people who hawk lottery tickets. Laranjeira Santos, another contemporary artist, describes his work and his influences.
I don't think that I have been greatly influenced, but of course I have had my influences. In my youth, it was Milão. You can still see that influence today in my work in the huge, round and highly polished forms. After perhaps Henry Moore, because I have a tendency to build my figures sitting with small heads and in a resting pose. The rest of the influences come from within.
Despite all the changes, Lisbon retains a leisurely, old-world quality. Original 19th century trams are still a vital part of the city's transport system. The Santa Justa lift, a fanciful Gothic tower created by Eiffel himself, transports people from the Baixa to the Bairro Alto. Parks are scattered throughout the city. Edward VII Park, located at the top of the Avenida de Liberdade, is one of the most beautiful. Lisbon is rich in small cafes and restaurants, busy from morning till late at night. The neighboring Atlantic Ocean provides an abundance of seafood dishes. Of all fish, bacalhau, or dried codfish, is the dearest to the Portuguese palate. The Portuguese have invented more than 365 ways to prepare it. Sardines cooked over charcoal grills are also very popular. Pork, chicken, and lamb are mainstays of the Portuguese diet. At the Hotel Tivoli, the resident chef prepares a traditional lamb dish, bife de lombo à portuguesa. Great pride is taken in preparation of the food and also in its presentation. To the Portuguese, dining, like life, is to be enjoyed and not rushed. Lisbon is a colorful place, especially during festival time. In June, the Festival of St. Anthony, Lisbon's patron saint, is observed. Groups from all over the country come to parade down Lisbon's main streets. The Costa de Lisboa region encircles the capital city of Lisbon. It is a region of romantic castles, dramatic rocky cliffs, and majestic palaces. A few miles northwest of Lisbon is Queluz. Queluz is famous for its royal palace. Built between 1758 and 1794, the palace was modeled after Versailles, just outside Paris. The palace and its gardens have an intimate charm. Westward from Queluz, toward the Atlantic, is the town of Cascais. For years, the rich and famous have been drawn to Cascais because of its beauty. However, the true spirit of the town is found in the local fishing community. Fishing methods have remained the same over many centuries. Returning after a day at sea, fishermen bring their catch to the central fish market auction. There are several lovely churches in Cascais, including the 17th century Igreja de Assunção. In the center of the gilded altar stands a statue of Our Lady of Assumption, for which the church is named. The walls are decorated with 18th century azulejos, depicting events from the Bible. Heading north along the coastline, a rocky highland juts out, dropping abruptly 200 feet to the sea. The Cape of the Rock, the westernmost point of the continent of Europe. A lighthouse built in 1772 provides guidance for seafarers. The words of the 16th century Portuguese poet Camões evokes the seafaring country's heritage. Here is where the land ends and the sea commences. To the east is the romantic town of Sintra. Its lush woods and grand palaces inspired the English poet Lord Byron to describe the area as a glorious Eden. Sintra boasts 3 palaces. The oldest, the Castelo dos Mouros, is situated on 2 peaks of the Serra de Sintra. From the walls of this castle, there is a magnificent view of the old town. The centerpiece is the former royal palace, the Palacio Nacional. Most of the building dates back to the reign of King Manuel I, who enlarged the palace, enriching it with Manuelino decorations. Dominating the town from the top of the Serra de Sintra is the Palacio de Pena. This fairy tale-like palace dates back to 1839, when King Fernando adapted the ruins of an old monastery for use as a summer residence. The architect, Baron von Eschweg, helped create the king's grandiose vision. The result is a Bavarian castle adorned with Arabic minarets, Gothic towers, Manuelino windows, and a Renaissance dome. The portico of Triton is adorned with an extravagant Manuelino sea decoration. The Palacio de Pena stands as a classic example of Portuguese architecture from the Romantic period. Encircling the palace is Pena Park, one of the loveliest parks in Europe. North of Sintra is the small town of Mafra. The center of Mafra is dominated by a huge architectural masterpiece known as the Convento de Mafra. Erected in the 18th century, this building houses a basilica, convent, and palace. The facility took more than 50,000 workers and 18 years to complete. The centerpiece of this complex is a magnificent Baroque church. The interior is richly decorated with colorful marble, bas-relief, and 6 organs. The chimes of its famous carillon fill the air. The Costa de Prata, or Silver Coast region, bridges the gap between the Costa de Lisboa and the Costa Verde regions. It consists of the provinces of Estremadura and Beira Litoral. It is a land of age-old culture and miracles. Set high on a hill is the quaint town of Abidos. To pass through the town's double-arched gateway is to step back in time. Flowered balconies, whitewashed houses, and narrow cobblestone streets. Its medieval atmosphere is preserved so completely that Abidos is often referred to as a museum town. From its walls stretch a tapestry of weathered orange roofs. Only a medieval castle and an ancient aqueduct break the pattern. To the north, one of the most impressive monuments in Portugal rises unexpectedly from the countryside, the Santa Maria de Vitoria Monastery. Located in the town of Batalha, this massive and elaborate monastery is a masterpiece of Portuguese Gothic architecture. The front portal's Gothic arches sweep upward to a sculpture of Christ on the throne, surrounded by the 4 evangelists. The interior of the chapel is endowed with elegant vaulted ceilings. The Founder's Chapel contains the tombs of King João and Queen Felipa and their children, most famous of whom is Prince Henry, the Navigator. Located near Batalha is the world-famous Roman Catholic shrine, Fatima. It is believed that on May 13, 1917, the Virgin Mary appeared to 3 peasant children who were tending their sheep. From all over the world, millions of pilgrims have since come here to pay homage to the Virgin Mary. Today, many of the faithful can be seen crawling on their knees to reach the basilica. Beside the basilica is the heart of the sanctuary, the Chapel of Apparitions. It was on this spot where the Virgin Mary is said to have made her appearance. North of Fatima, in the rolling green countryside, lie the ruins of a 1st century Roman town. Coimbra is the site of the largest excavated Roman ruin in Portugal. Remains of surprisingly large houses, stunning mosaic floors, public baths, and an aqueduct are all carefully preserved. A few miles farther, perched on a hill overlooking the river Mondego, is the university town of Coimbra. The university, established in 1290, is the oldest in Portugal. A statue of King João III, who brought the university to Coimbra from Lisbon in 1537, reigns from the center of the courtyard. The pride of the academic complex is the university library. Its 3 Baroque rooms are paneled in Brazilian ebony, trimmed in Oriental motifs, and lined with 100,000 gold-stamped rare books. Many of the university's traditions continue to be observed today. Some students can still be seen dressed in black capes, the traditional academic dress since the Middle Ages. The colorful ribbons identify the student's course of study. Dark blue signifies letters or languages. Slightly north of Coimbra is a mountain famous for its luxurious forest, Busaku. This forest is the legacy of the Carmelite friars who built a monastery in the center of it in 1628. The presence of the friars helped to enrich the forest. They introduced maples, laurels, and Mexican cedars into the area, varieties brought back from Portuguese voyages to the New World. In the late 19th century, King Carlos chose to build a summer palace and hunting lodge here on the site of the old monastery. Its interior is elaborately decorated. Panels of azulejos depicting scenes from the famous Battle of Busaku adorn the walls. In September 1810, the Portuguese-English forces under the command of Lord Wellington routed the French forces led by Marshal André Massena. This decisive defeat ended Napoleon's attempt to conquer Portugal. The palace, which has now been turned into a grand hotel, houses a large wine cellar containing the fine Busaku wines. To the north, towards the coast, is a lovely town described as the Venice of Portugal, Aveiro. The comparison stems from crisscrossing canals found throughout the town. These canals flow into a vast lagoon that extends inland off the coast. These boats are used to gather seaweed for fertilizer. For centuries, fishermen here have harvested from the sea. Their daily catch is sold each morning in the local fish market. The Costa Verde region occupies the northwestern corner of Portugal and includes the provinces of Minho and Douro. This region, sometimes called the Green Coast, is a glittering emerald in Portugal's crown. The Minho province is a land rich in folklore, crafts, and traditional festivities. Its people are deeply religious and hard-working. The enchanting town of Viana do Castelo, near Portugal's northern border, best illustrates the province's charms. Viana reached the height of its prosperity through trade in the 16th century. And many of Viana's finest buildings date from that period. They surround the Praça da República, a most striking square which has in its center the chafariz, a fountain constructed in 1553. Facing the fountain to the east is the former town hall, a late 16th century Gothic structure. To the north rises the hill of Santa Luzia, crowned by a turn-of-the-century Neo-Byzantine church. The Basilica de Santa Luzia was fashioned after the Sacré-Cœur in Paris. South of Viana do Castelo is the small market town of Barcelos, Located by the river Cavadu, it is known not only for its historical monuments, beautiful gardens, and weekly handicraft fair, but also as the home of the Portuguese symbol of good luck, the Barcelos cock. According to a 13th century legend, a condemned man said to a judge that a roasted cockerel would stand up and crow to prove his innocence. To the amazement of the judge, it did, and the man was set free. A 15th century monumental cross stands at the site of the miracle. The cross is located in the ruins of the palace of the Dukes of Braganza, now an open-air archaeological museum. Barcelos has one of the biggest weekly fairs in the country.
Meu amor, é de 7, com uma de graça, eu faço o ano. Faz, este vai para a senhora, do tempo que morreu.
West of Barcelos, surrounded by rolling green hills, is the religious city of Braga. In the 12th century, Braga was designated as the seat of a newly created archdiocese. The archbishops were said to have greater power than kings. Their legacy, magnificent churches and palaces. They also infused a strong religious spirit into the city which can still be felt today. The city contains over 300 churches, and its chapels are constantly lit with votive candle offerings. Nearby shops sell a vast array of religious artifacts. The oldest and most famous church is the Sé. The Sé is an imposing edifice, its elaborate Gothic portico decorated with delicate columns. The medieval wing of the Archbishop's Palace serves as a backdrop to one of Portugal's beautiful gardens, the Jardim de Santa Bárbara. Braga's people are considered to be very religious. Their faith is prominently displayed during the festival in honor of the patron saint, St. John. This celebration takes place in June. The pivotal event is a procession where the image of the patron saint, along with other religious images, are carried through the city streets. A few miles from Braga is the religious retreat of Bom Jesus do Monte. The complex is composed of a monumental Baroque staircase leading up to a neoclassical church. The staircase is richly decorated and lined with chapels and fountains and topped with a lovely ornamental garden. The church itself is the work of the famous Braga architect Carlos Emerante. The interior is simple in design and formed in the shape of a Latin cross. Guimarães, a busy manufacturing town, lies at the foot of a mountain range southwest of Braga. This town was the first capital of Portugal. It is dominated by the 10th century castle, in which Afonso Henriques, the nation's first king, was born in 1110. Afonso was baptized in the lovely tiny church of St. Michael on the green in front of this castle. On June 24th, 1128, in a field near Guimarães, the young Afonso defeated his mother's army and established this region's independence. He declared himself king in 1139 and started to form what is now Portugal. A monument to Afonso Henriques is located at the entrance to the castle. Near the castle can be found the palace of the Dukes of Braganza. This 15th century palace was built by the first Duke, Dom Afonso. Today, the palace stands as a museum to 15th century Portuguese aristocratic lifestyle. The Rua de Santa Maria with its wrought iron balconies and stone archways, is one of the oldest streets in Portugal. It leads to the Praça de Oliveira, which marks the spot where the 7th century Visigoth warrior, Wamba, was confirmed as king. According to legend, he said he would become king only if his staff sprouted olive leaves when he drove it into the ground. This church, Our Lady of the Olive Tree, was built in honor of this miracle. In front of this church, true to legend, is an olive tree. South of Guimarães is the province of Douro, which takes its name from the river along its southern border. The word Douro means of gold, but the real gold, however, are the grapes that grow on its banks. They produce Portugal's most famous ambassadors, port wines. The grapes that go into making port wine grow only on these hillside vines. The upper Douro Valley is located in the mountainous region of Portugal, which includes the provinces of Trás-os-Montes and Upper and Lower Beira. The mountains are responsible for the climate and soil that is ideal for grape growing. Countless hours of manual labor have been spent creating these terraced grounds. The port harvest usually begins in late September and lasts until early November. The wine process begins the minute the grapes arrive at the wineries located nearby. In the spring, the wine is transported by truck or rail to the wine lodges of Vila Nova de Gaia, a suburb across the river from Porto. In the past, the casks of young wine were brought downriver on square-shaped sailing boats known as barcos rebeldes. These retired boats can still be seen moored on the Douro River. There are over 80 port lodges in Vila Nova de Gaia. They each contain large cellars where the wine is left to mature in large oak casks called pipes. Conditions in the cellars are strictly controlled to provide an optimal environment. Also, the blending of most ports takes place here. Wines from different vineyards and different years are carefully blended to produce a consistent port. These blended ports are the mainstay of the port industry, but the most famous are the vintage ports. Fatima Andrade of Sandeman explains the difference between a vintage and port wine.
In a vintage year, there's only a small part of the harvest will be the vintage wines. It is the best wine of the best years. So it won't be blended, it won't be mixed with different years because it's a very special, very good quality wine.
Once the blended wine has sufficiently matured, it is removed from the casks and bottled and boxed for shipment worldwide. Porto, the city which has given its name not only to the world-renowned wine, but also the country, is located at the mouth of the River Douro. The second largest city in Portugal, Porto is essentially a working city. Porto has been the hub of the lucrative port wine trade since the 18th century. It is also the center for the export of countless other industrial and agricultural products from this northern region. These products account for 2/3 of the nation's total exports. The business district surrounds the broad Avenida dos Aliados, located in the center of town. The street leads uphill to the town hall, an imposing neo-Renaissance structure which dominates its surroundings. West of the town hall rises the city's most prominent historical monument, the Torre dos Clérigos. This 18th century granite tower, with 6 floors and 225 steps, is the highest in Portugal. South of the tower is a twin-towered fortress-like cathedral. Built originally in the 12th century, it has since been greatly modified. Inside is a 14th century Gothic cloister wrapped in azulejo panels. A few blocks east of the cathedral is the 19th century Palacio de Bolsa. which houses the city's stock exchange. Its dazzling oval Arab room is modeled after the Moorish Alhambra in Granada, Spain. Just behind the Bolsa stands the Iglesia de San Francisco. Located along the riverbank, a few blocks southeast of the church, is the oldest part of the city, called Caixa da Ribeira. The Ponte de Dom Luís directly links Porto to Vila Nova de Gaia. This two-story iron bridge was built by a disciple of the famous engineer, Alexander Gustav Eiffel. Despite its nickname as the City of Work, the people of Porto do find time to enjoy themselves. This is especially true during the city's main festival honoring St. John. Following years of tradition, the people take to the streets and hit one another teasingly with bundles of leeks, and nowadays, plastic hammers. Although it covers almost 1/3 of the country's total area, the Planicies region contains only about 500,000 people, making it the least populous part of Portugal. The Planicies region is comprised of the vast, rugged Alentejo province and the meadowlands of the smaller Ribatejo province. The market town of Santarém, capital of the Ribatejo, sits on the rocky hilltop overlooking the Tagus River. In the oldest part of town is the 14th century Graça Church, famous for this magnificent rose window. A short distance beyond is a splendid park, framed by old castle walls, the Portas do Sal. During the summer, Santarém hosts one of Europe's leading agricultural fairs. This fair is a showcase for the industry that provides a livelihood for 1/3 of the people of Portugal. The Ribatejo Fair, held at the same time, is a celebration of the proud people of the region. Portuguese journalist João Paulo Diniz talks about one such dance that is unique to this region.
Fandango is something very typical from this province of Portugal, Ribatejo, and so Fandango, it's a kind of a challenge between two men who are keen in the same movement. Those men, they try to do their very best in order to, make the best of performance, to make some attraction to this young lady.
The main event of the fair is a spectacle which touches the soul of most Portuguese people, the tourada, or bullfight. It has been one of Portugal's most popular events since the 17th century. In Spain, the matador with his cape takes center stage. In Portugal, his counterparts, the peões de brega, are only bit players. The lead role goes instead to the cavaleiro. At the sound of a bugle, the cavaleiro enters the ring. The gate is opened, and the bull charges. The cavaleiro toys with the bull to enrage him further. In a series of strikes, he must plunge several darts into the bull's neck. The cavaleiro trains with his horse for many years until he is capable of the split-second timing necessary to achieve success. After the last dart has been placed, the cavaleiro exits to an applauding crowd. The next event of the bullfight is uniquely Portuguese. 8 men, called furcados, face the bull in a single file. The leader calls to the animal until it charges. He holds on tight between the bull's horns. It is then up to the remaining 7 to jump one after another onto the bull's back and slow the charge. Finally, the tail is grabbed and the animal is brought to a stop. The bull is then escorted out of the ring by a herd of steers. In Portugal's tourada, the bull is never killed. Southeast of Santarém, in the heart of the Alentejo region, is one of the oldest cities in Portugal, Évora. Surrounded by fortress walls, Évora stands as Portugal's foremost showpiece of medieval architecture. The Temple of Diana, dating from the 2nd or 3rd century. The facade and mosaic floor have disappeared, but most of the temple's original Corinthian granite columns have survived. Near the temple is the Sé, or cathedral. A mix of Romanesque and Gothic styles, its main portal is flanked by 2 oddly dissimilar towers. The apostles standing guard on either side of the church entrance are masterpieces of medieval Portuguese sculpture. The Largo das Portas de Moura is a small, serene square, a few blocks south of the Sé. The focal point of life in Évora is Giraldo Square. At the northern end of the square is the Church of St. Anthony, which was built during the 16th century. Nearby is the Loius Church and Convent. It is now a state-owned inn, or posada. Posadas are a string of small showcase hotels around Portugal where an authentic taste of history and life of the country can be experienced. Each posada reflects furnishings, decor, and art objects that are typically unique to that region. There are 2 types of posadas, regional and historical. Regional posadas have been carefully selected in sites of exceptional natural beauty. Historic posadas are found in restored castles, convents, palaces, or fortresses. The posada cuisine is also a reflection of local traditions and ingredients. Posadas have acquired a well-deserved reputation for the quality of the wine and food they serve. On the road leading to Reguengos de Monsaraz, a handicraft center east of Évora, a man creates baskets using techniques passed down from generations. In this handicraft center, coppersmiths toil away to produce their shiny wares. In the Fábrica Alentejana de Lenefícios, traditional hand-woven rugs are made. This factory is one of the few to keep the traditional craft alive. The results are rugs of superb quality and design, which are uniquely Portuguese. The landscape of the Alentejo region is studded with pine, eucalyptus, cork, and olive trees. Forestry is a major industry in Portugal. The pine and eucalyptus trees provide the industry's main output, pulp, along with other important products. The sprawling cork trees, which are specifically distinctive to this region, supply more than half of the world's cork. At harvest time, workmen wield razor-sharp axes to skillfully strip the bark off the mature trees. Machines cannot replace the expertise of the strippers, who cut the bark with such skill that the tender trunk below is left undamaged. The trees are then dated, as it will be another 9 years before the bark can be harvested again. Separated by a chain of mountains is the southernmost region of Portugal, the Algarve. It is a region of almost endless sunshine. For centuries, the local economy revolved around farming and fishing. Recently, the area's increased popularity as a prime holiday destination has brought a new industry, tourism. The name of the region comes from the Arabic word Algarve, meaning the West. Other visible signs of the Moorish influence are the town names, which have the AL prefix, the whitewashed houses, which tradition rules have to be painted twice a year, and the traditional lattice chimneys which adorn these houses. Located in the heart of the region, the ancient city of Silves served as a Moorish capital of the Algarve. A medieval atmosphere endures in Silves. This castle was originally built during the 4th century BC. Moorish modifications greatly enhanced the structure and gave it its present form. The Sé of Silves was built in the 13th century. Cleft windows, gargoyles, and pyramid-shaped battlements adorn the cathedral. The coastal capital of Algarve is the city of Faro, located southeast of Silves. The Arco de Vila is the entrance to the city's old quarter. A few blocks north is located one of Faro's most beautiful churches, the Igreja do Carmo. The church's interior is richly decorated with 18th century carvings. Through a side entrance, the macabre Capella dos Ossos, or Chapel of Bones, can be found. This vault was constructed from the skulls and bones of monks and parishioners. Faro is the gateway to the rest of the Algarve. This region is well known for its pottery. In the town of Porches, west of Faro, local artisans paint as they have done for centuries. These artisans take great care in replicating popular designs, but since every piece is done by hand, each retains a distinct individuality. Beautiful, clean, sandy beaches. Along the coast, a short distance from the city of Portimão, is the most celebrated beach of the Algarve, Praia de Roca. Heading away from the coast, the countryside is sprinkled with small meadows. Alongside these meadows are groves of olive, fig, almond, carob, and citrus trees on which grow the main agricultural products of this region. Lagos is a coastal community with a rich history. It was the principal shipyard and port from which the first explorers began their voyages. Near the harbor is a statue of Prince Henry, the navigator who provided leadership for the early explorers. Although most of the buildings of this period were destroyed in the earthquake of 1755, one remnant of this golden age remains, the Igreja de Santo Antonio. The inside of this church is an exuberant masterpiece of carved wood and 18th century tiles. To the west, beyond Lagos, the coastline becomes poetically dramatic with high, rugged cliffs. For centuries, the Sagres Peninsula was thought of as the sleeping place of the gods. This promontory is where many believe Prince Henry set up his 15th century school of navigation. It is thought to have been a community of scholars who pooled their knowledge of map-making, shipbuilding, and mathematics. Here, the first voyages of discovery were planned. Evidence of this is the Fortaleza do Beliche. Within these walls are stones laid out in the form of a large mariner's compass. Fishing has always played a major role in the commerce of Algarve. From the cliffs close by, men cast their long lines into the sea. A few miles down the road from the Fortaleza is the southwesternmost tip of Europe, the Cape of St. Vincent. Before the age of discovery, this point was thought of as the end of the world. Standing at the tip of the cape is the second most powerful lighthouse in Europe. This broad white tower, crowned in red, projects a beam 60 miles out to sea. As night falls, one of the most peaceful places on Earth can be found on the cliffs near the cape. Every evening, the sun plunges swiftly, dramatically, into the endless sea. Portugal is a land full of treasures waiting to be discovered.
Whether you're traveling in the United States or abroad, for business or pleasure, nobody gives you more for your money than Hertz. That's why America made us #1. That's why we're America's Wheels. For reservations, call your travel agent or Hertz at 1-800-654-3131.
What would you call an airline that flies to over 150 destinations in 18 countries, on 4 continents, over 2 oceans, including over 125 cities just in the U.S.? You'd probably call it something like Trans World Airlines, if that name weren't already taken. Today's TWA, find out how good we really are.
World travel, filled with action, excitement, and adventure. International Video Network's video visits are your ticket to the world. These exciting video programs will whisk you away to more than 50 fascinating destinations on 6 continents. Breathtaking photography heightens the beauty and grandeur of the world's greatest cities and countries. Entertaining as well as informative, video visits are a great way to relive memorable vacations, plan your next trip, or just to satisfy your curiosity of exotic locales. From the pulsating sounds of Carnival in Rio to the peaceful serenity of Ireland's countryside, each video visit will transport you to the actual location. Video visits also feature authentic ethnic music providing insights into the different cultures of the world. Whether it be an Irish colleen singing a traditional folk song, or the boisterous Oktoberfest in Munich. You'll examine the people of today's ever-changing world, discovering the similarities and differences that makes each of them unique, from the native Eskimos of Alaska to the Buddhist monks of China. Bring the world into your home by visiting such sites as the 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 All these and many more exciting destinations are waiting to be discovered by you now. Also available is the Reader's Digest Great National Park Series, Yosemite, Yellowstone, and the Grand Canyon. Crown jewels of America's national park system are available for your viewing pleasure. To start or expand your video travel library, order video visits or the Great National Park Series from your favorite retailer, mail order catalog, or by calling International Video Network at 415-866-1121 for the name of a distributor near you.